Hello, viewers, and welcome to what I believe is the most disturbing and mysterious location in Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. With that being said, what I think is the most interesting about this is the fact that a lot of care and attention to detail was put into this scene, and yet it is very much off the beaten path. If you take a look, we are on the Trotsky map, and we are just south of the charcoal burner camp on the road, but you'll see that when we look over across this clearing, which is where we are going to go, you can't see any sign that there is any location there other than just trees. And that's very interesting to me. Like I said, why put so much effort into creating this scene when it's something that most players may never stumble across? So we're going to cross this clearing here, and you can see the flames there, and that is where we are going to. And we'll dismount and we'll proceed from here on foot, and you'll quickly see why I think this is pretty much the most disturbing location you can find in the game. Okay, viewers, so we are now at the location, and I think you can see why I consider this to be the most disturbing find in Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. When you come into this little clearing, you will find 4 bodies that were burned at the stake. But beyond that, what you'll also find is that there are 4 additional bodies discarded off to the side here. You have the 2 rib cages, you have the skeleton, and then there's a charred body here as well. And what that tells us is that at least 8 people were burned at the stake here, and that this was not a one-off event. This is something that they did at least twice and probably took quite a bit of time. If we go around the pyre, we could also see that some of these victims were burned alive. That's pretty obvious with this skeleton here, as their back is arched forward and their mouth is open in what was likely a scream of agony as the flames consumed them. However, we could look at some of these other bodies and we can see that they are mummified, and we see this a lot at the gravedigger locations to symbolize or to tell us that a person is already dead. And so some of these people may well have been dead before they were brought here and tied to the stake, and that's pretty interesting. We also see that these bodies over here were not consumed by the fire, and it appears that maybe the fire is only started on this side because it looks like the wood over here has not been lit on fire. It's not charred or anything like that. The only place that we have fire is on this side here. However, it looks like the fire may have burned for quite some time to have been able to burn all of the flesh and sinew off of this skeleton. So it's a little bit confusing because we don't know, was this fire just lit by somebody who fled, maybe as Henry approached, or is this the tail end of the burning and we're just seeing kind of the last remnants of the flames here? Both are probably possible, although I lean towards the idea that the fire was burning for quite some time before. One other thing that I wanted to point out that does make this scene a little bit more eerie and supernatural is the odd blue light that is on this corpse here. And we can move around and we can see that this blue light plays over the shoulder. It's not always visible either, which is why I didn't mention it at first. Sometimes I just don't see it there. However, it's very apparent at other times. And what I thought at first was that this might be a graphics glitch. However, when we look at the blue light, it doesn't extend behind the skeleton at all. It only is on that one shoulder and arm area. It doesn't go back onto the stake, and it doesn't appear to affect any of the lighting in the woods behind that body. And I'm not sure. It still could be a graphics glitch. However, it definitely adds an era of supernatural mystery and sinister power to this scene. Now that we have examined the scene, let's go ahead and ask ourselves the first of 2 big questions that involve the mystery here. The first question is, why were these people burned at the stake? And there are 3 pieces of evidence from which we can draw some conclusions. The first piece of evidence is the fact that they burned both living and dead victims here. The second piece of evidence are the brooms that the victims were burned with. You can see a broom tied to the stake here and here. And then you can see another broom that's in the center of the pyre, one that's on the ground over here. And then this skeleton from the first burning is clutching a broom in its hands. And the third piece of evidence we have is this golden crucifix that is on the ground here. It's a very valuable crucifix, and we'll pick it up just, obviously just to secure evidence and make sure it stays safe and untainted. But from these three pieces of evidence, we can conclude that this was probably a witch burning. The brooms were obviously likely there to signify the guilt of these victims as witches, and the fact that they burned both living and dead makes sense. In the Middle Ages, a lot of people believed that dark magic could linger on a witch's corpse, and if that dark magic wasn't dispelled, it could curse or infect other people around it. In addition, if a witch was buried, dark magics might cause them to rise again as either a ghost or some type of vampire. It really depended on where you lived in the Middle Ages and what time period, but these were all things that people considered. Burning witches alive at the stake is something that's probably a little bit overused by Hollywood, but it was very much a historical event as well. Lastly, the golden crucifix was probably brought here to ward off evil magic. There would have been a concern that the living witch might curse them, or that the magic that dissipates from dead bodies that were believed to be guilty of witchcraft could somehow latch on to the people around. And so, based off of all those factors, I think we are pretty safe in saying that this was some type of a witch burning. So now that we have determined that this was probably some type of a witch burning, we are left with two other questions, and these questions are really at the heart of the mystery from this scene. The first question is, who were these people? We know that there were 8 victims, however, we don't even know their gender because 3 of the bodies are mummified and the other ones have been burned beyond recognition, so we don't know if they were men or women. And while we might have a common perception that witches were female, this was not always the case in the Middle Ages, and sometimes men could be accused of witchcraft as well. And we really have no evidence, although I do think when you look at some of these pelvises here, the size of the holes in the pelvis would support the possibility that these were women. However, once again, that would only prove for those particular victims, not for the ones that are, say, mummified. What's also important to note is that 8 people would be a lot for this particular region in Kingdom Come Deliverance. When we look at the population in some of these small villages, 8 people would have been a significant portion of any town or settlement outside of Kuttenberg, but that's in a different region. So it's surprising that when you ride around the Trotsky region, nobody seems to mention this. I went and I tried to question the charcoal burners because I figured that they might be somewhat aware of the witch burning that happened right next door, but they won't talk to you. And I've asked around at some of the other locations, and I've never heard anything about the witch burning. However, I will admit I have not done every side quest in the Trotsky region, so I may have missed something. If I did miss something, let me know in the comments below, because I would definitely like to know a little bit more about this situation. And that brings us to the second question in this mystery, which is, who brought these people here and burned them at the stake? And there's a few different possibilities here. Was it the villagers in the area? Was it a local priest? Was it von Bergau or somebody working with him? Or was it somebody who was passing through the area, perhaps part of Sigismund's army or something like that? We really don't have a good answer for this. However, there is one clue, and that is the golden crucifix that we picked up off the ground. That crucifix, as I said when I picked it up, was quite valuable. It was worth 1,430 groschen. I think an item of that value would be significantly more than a small local church would be able to afford, much less your average villager. And that would suggest that whoever had these victims brought here was somebody with means. In fact, I believe we can find similar crucifixes of value in von Bergau's chapel. So that would sort of implicate him in this witch burning, and let's face it, from what we see of von Bergau within the Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 storyline, he seems like the type of guy that would be perfectly fine with burning 8 people alive and not batting an eyelash at it. However, once again, as I said, we don't really know, and these two questions are the big mystery with this scene. Clearly, there was a lot of effort put into creating this scene and a lot of attention to detail, and yet it's something that I have not heard mentioned at all going through the Trotsky region, and it's very much off the beaten path. So I find this very interesting. It's certainly a very disturbing scene, and it definitely creates that air of mystery. I want to go and ride around the region and try to figure out who these people were and why they were brought to this terrible fate. If you happen to know an answer to this and know something that I've missed in the Trotsky region, definitely leave that in the comments section below, or let me know what you think the story behind these victims was. What happened to them? Who were they? As always, if you enjoy this content, go ahead, hit the like, subscribe, and notification bell, and as always, take care until the next time.